so special that the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra League rose to this challenge and superseded expectations to be our concert sponsors this weekend. And as Joan and Vicki may have mentioned, this is a first. So we're honored by that, and we want to thank again the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra League and all those who contributed to make that possible, to make this concert possible. Thank you again. Yes. We have a number of special guests joining the orchestra on stage this weekend. Of course, first, perhaps and foremost, is our wonderful former concertmaster, Eleanor Barch, who we're so excited to welcome back to her musical home in Dubuque. And we're very grateful to Mark and Beth Higley for sponsoring her as our guest artist sponsor. Thank you, Mark, and your wonderful friend, Susie. And then we're also very grateful to people at DuPaco who have helped the funding for another group of special guests who will join the symphony this weekend, our Dubuque Symphony Youth Orchestra. And thank you to Chad Liska, who's here representing DuPaco, and to everybody involved that made that possible. It takes a lot to make an event like that possible. And I also want to just personally mention that I'm a big fan of Paul Chase's work. I have 2 of those sculptures in my own home. And thank you for everything you've done to donate that and to donate proceeds of further sales as well. Thank you so much. Yeah. A lot going on with this weekend. It feels like forever since we've been here at a Soundbites, since last November. It's great to be back in the swing of it and to be welcoming perhaps the beginning of some spring weather, we hope. Yes. Yes, this concert is a really special one for so many reasons. Before we get into the talking about the composers and the pieces and everything like that, I do want to maybe make a special mention of 2 other guests who are here today who are in the orchestra. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but LeBaron Wallace from our oboe section and Robin Schultz from our trombones. We're honored that you're here. We're honored that you're here with us at the luncheon, and your talent is what makes the magic happen. So you and all of your fellow colleagues in the orchestra, we're eternally grateful for your dedication and professionalism and musicianship. So thank you both. And Eleanor, my gosh, how wonderful is it to have her back? We'll be hearing from her in a little bit about her life and about the Barber Violin Concerto, a piece that both she and I love dearly, and that we had actually first had the idea of programming here with her as soloist maybe 10 years ago. I think it was 10 years ago. So this is a realization of a long time coming, of a dream come true. But we do have these 2 works by Jean Sibelius sort of flanking the Barber Violin Concerto on this concert. We'll begin with the Youth Symphony on stage with the members of the orchestra. So it'll be a packed stage. And what a wonderful image that will be. But it's also just the incredible sound that will come out with that many musicians. This is an experience that I remember something like this when I was in youth orchestra, when I was in high school. And it's an experience that changed my life forever. And I'm hoping that something like that will be happening with these young musicians this weekend. We also have 2 guests from our youth orchestra here, and I want to take a moment to recognize them, and I'm going to ask the director of the youth orchestra, Dr. Rob Stull, to come up for a moment. But please welcome Rob Stull, and also our principal bassoonist from the youth orchestra, Adeline Dolan. By the way, some of you might recognize Adeline because she was our most recent concerto competition winner, and so she performed with the orchestra by the river last June on her bassoon. Yes, so you might recognize her. So congratulations again, Adeline. So Rob, tell us what it's like to conduct the youth orchestra every Sunday night and to be forming these young musicians and opening their hearts and minds to music, and what it's been like to prepare this piece specifically and to get them ready for the side-by-side with the DSO musicians.
Sure thing. First off, my Sundays are my favorite days because of being able to rehearse with these students who choose to be in this orchestra. They're not required to be in this orchestra. They choose to be in this orchestra on a Sunday outside of school, right? and there's no grades or anything like that. They choose to come and share their talents with me and the other members for them to experience more music, to have music outside of what they do in their daily lives in music. So it's always wonderful. Sundays are always great, from 4:30 to 7:30 to work with these students. So it's wonderful to work with them every week and see them grow, because as William mentioned, somewhere down the line, all of us as professionals had an experience either like this or something that made us say, we want to continue to do this, and this is going to be part of our lives. So to be a part on the other end of that, right, to be the person who makes that change is so very important to me, and that's the reason why I'm doing what I do. So that's exciting to work with them on Sundays. Now, for the actual piece that we're doing, we received this piece after our last concert in November. So we've had some time with other pieces. We had another concert February 1st. It was a side-by-side at Clark. And so we worked a little bit of Finlandia for a little bit, and then we focused on the other pieces, and now we got back to it. And it's always interesting because as the process goes, they grow with knowing the piece, but I also grow with knowing the piece. And what's really great is you get notes from Maestro and Trilogator that says, here's how I like to do this, or here are the tempos I like. And it gives me a chance to also learn a different outlook at the piece itself. A piece that we have done so many times before. It is a popular one for youth orchestras, or just orchestras in general to do. So a very important piece in the repertoire to do. So it's been learning for all of us, which is wonderful.
Wow, we're so grateful for your wonderful leadership of this group too, and all the ways that you've helped them grow. And what year is this now that you've been conducting the youth orchestra?
This is 6 for me.
Year 6?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know it's tough because you rehearse this piece week in and week out, and then you're not the one on the podium at the concerts. So tell us a little bit about that. But I love the fact that if I'm sick or indisposed, I've got a fantastic person ready to step in.
That's a wonderful thing too. But it's hard sometimes for conductors and maybe performers to be able to sit back and enjoy it concert every once in a while. So in this case, sort of forcing me to sit in the audience is going to be great, because you go and you're sitting there, oh, I would have done this differently, or I would have done that, or I think that's not how I conducted, or anything like that. And the next thing you know, you don't enjoy a concert. You're worried about all of the stuff that you're learning about the concert. So this is great for me to prepare this piece, hand it off, and just enjoy. And that's, hopefully, is something that everybody can do, is just come to these concerts, sit back and enjoy. Outside of all the craziness that's outside of the concert hall, for that hour and a half or 2 hours that we're in that concert hall, it's just us, and we're creating things.
Yeah.
Such a wonderful feeling, and another reason why we do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Rob. And for an experience like this, with the side-by-side with the youth and the orchestra and the professional orchestra, one of the things that's so important are the rehearsals, of course. We're not just having them come in and play right at the concert. We started with a pizza party together last night with both orchestras, and then we had a rehearsal together where it was our first time getting used to each other and fitting on the stage. And after running through the piece and me working on a few things, I let each section kind of have their time to just work and get to know each other, and let maybe some of the Dubuque Symphony musicians coach the musicians next to them. So there's really active coaching happening in each rehearsal. And we get 3 rehearsals together like that. So that's very exciting. So I think it's really going to be a good educational experience for these kids. We hope so. Adeline, I don't know if there's anything you would want to share about maybe what you're expecting or anything like that. Or yeah, please. Please welcome Adeline Dolan.
Hello, everybody. I'm super excited for this weekend because I essentially get a chance to play with a professional orchestra, which I've never done, not as a soloist.
Wow,
I'm very excited to sit with the bassoon section specifically because I've heard them play and they're just amazing. And their sound is so pretty, and they're all very nice people too.
Yes.
I'm also very interested to have another director too, because I've never had another orchestra director besides Dr. PB at school and Dr. Stoll. And I think it'll just be a very fun experience.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Bella.
This is where I turn the questions back to William. Can you tell a little bit about the excitement that you have in this case, or maybe the excitement of some of the players, the professional players? Because we're all excited because we get to be with the big group. But what excitement comes from the actual professionals on stage?
For me, I'm excited because this piece, too, is such a great one to play together. Because Finlandia is one of the greatest symphonic poems that orchestras have, and we're so blessed that we have this beautiful music to play. Many of you know and love Finlandia, not just the central hymn that's so beautiful and has become a sort of anthem in Finland, but also is well known in church as either Be Still My Soul or other hymns. But also just the piece as a whole, from its journey from darkness to light. This is a piece that literally caused a revolution. I mean, it helped Finland create a sort of sense of solidarity and identity at a time when they were part of Russia. And there was something called the February Manifesto that had just come out in February 1899. And all of a sudden, instead of just being kind of left to their own devices but being part of a Grand Duchy of Russia, all of a sudden there were all these Russian rules and regulations being enforced. There was a lot of lack of freedom all of a sudden. And so, but it sort of, kind of blew up in their face in a sense because there was this reaction. Finnish people had not even really kind of gathered around the language, the culture. They didn't even speak the language of Finnish. They were speaking Swedish, most of them, because for years, centuries before they were part of Russia, they were part of Sweden. But so it was this kind of tightening of the grip of the Russian Tsar in 1899 that caused the Finnish people to realize, you know what, maybe we need to be our own country. It's something that we as Americans can really identify with. And so there's this story being told in the music, the darkness, the ominous kind of impenetrable forces that you hear at the beginning with the brass instruments. And then the sort of sense of defiance and resilience, and then leading to this hymn of hope and great brotherhood and joy. This is a piece that's also about love of country, love of God. It's a faith, very spiritual piece. And so what a perfect opportunity to show young people in the youth orchestra that music can change the world and that music can change lives. And it's a piece also that's about unity and bringing the Finnish people together, but it's also about bringing us together as a combined orchestra, as a combined community, as a combined country or combined planet. It's really about that sort of sense, almost like leading to Beethoven's Ninth later this season about all men are equal and we're all brothers. And so it has that kind of feeling to it too, which is sort of a precursor to Beethoven's Ninth in April. So that's what I'm excited about. Thanks for asking. You didn't know what you were going to get with that question.
It led right where it needed
Oh,
to
good. Well, I want to thank both Dr. Stahl and Adeline for being here and putting so much into it. I also want to thank our Director of Education, Hannah von Mullert, who's done an outstanding job making this possible. Hannah von Mullert also gives up all of her Sunday nights. I shouldn't say gives up, but that's part of her job. And she does a fantastic job with all of our education programs, the side-by-side, all the youth ensembles, the Arts Trek concerts, and the string camp, and so much more. So thank you again, Hannah. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Yeah, music, this is such a great piece to show that music can change the world. I will just play just a little bit, just to remind you of, oh, that's Finlandia. Yes, I forgot. It starts with this ominous theme. The original first title of this piece was Finland Awakes. And at the first performance, they actually didn't announce the piece in either title. they just said, because they were kind of flying under the radar of the sort of Russian authorities who wouldn't have allowed a concert with this kind of revolutionary spirit to happen. So they made it a concert that was about promoting the pension fund for journalists and a free press. But it was also about a free press. That was revolutionary too. But it was for the pension fund for the journalists. And that was the sort of the ruse or the guise of which they had this sort of revolutionary secret meeting. Now, Finland didn't gain its independence until many years later when, when Russia as we know it kind of ended in 1917. But it was this music that was like a call to arms, if you will, for all the Finnish people. Okay, so then it builds up to a theme sounding like this. And then it changes to a theme that sounds like this. But the part that you might be waiting for is this part. Beautiful music. It's interesting how that piece became a sort of second national anthem in Finland, sort of like the way America the Beautiful is for us. It's not their official national, but it's maybe the one that's more in their hearts, perhaps. And there are some wonderful performances of Finlandia with words and a chorus singing in Finnish. You can see that on YouTube. But what's also fascinating is the way that it's a piece of music that has a nationalistic flavor about it without using any kind of folk tunes. At this time in classical music, nationalism was very popular. You can think of composers like Dvorak and Grieg and many others, even Mahler, who used folk songs, and that evoked a certain kind of identity, a sort of national pride and identity. But in all of Sibelius's music, all of it, there's not one example of a Finnish folk song. Isn't that shocking? This is a person whose music is synonymous with his country, and yet he didn't use any folk songs. It's like Copeland without Simple Gifts. Something that's hard to imagine. So it's fascinating. He creates a sense of identity through the atmosphere that he writes. Mostly it has to do with almost like the Finnish weather. He's bringing that landscape and that weather. He's creating a landscape picture for us in music. That's the way he evokes Scandinavia, perhaps in general, but Finland specifically. But that's also perhaps why the music is universal. And you don't have to be Finnish or know a Finnish folk song to appreciate and love it. And you hear that also in his first symphony. It's interesting that the Finlandia was written right around 1899, 1900. The first symphony was also premiered in 1899. So this is a young Sibelius writing his first symphony at age 34. The symphony was technically done first, and Finlandia came just after. And it'll be interesting for you to hear these two pieces together on one concert, because you'll actually perhaps hear a slight evolution even from within that year of 1899 to later that year in 1900. So even though we start with the later piece, Finlandia, and at the second half of the concert you'll hear the entire First Symphony, you'll hear that in the First Symphony it's a little bit more indebted to some other great Romantic composers. Many people have noticed the connection between the First Symphony and the music of Tchaikovsky and the music of Bruckner. You can certainly hear that in this piece, but it's also just a young composer, like I said, age 34, finding his voice as a symphonist, and he would go on to be one of the greatest symphonists of the 20th century, and also finding a voice for his country. Because prior to Sibelius, you didn't think of Finnish people as having a classical music. And so he himself studied in Berlin, and as a young man, you might remember the story from when we've done the violin concerto, that he was an aspiring violinist who auditioned for the Vienna Philharmonic and didn't make it, and then went home and cried and excessively drank, and and then decided, okay, maybe I'll be a composer. He really wanted to be a violinist. How appropriate that we have a violin concerto on this program too, yeah. And one that I think he would have adored, yeah. So in this symphony by Sibelius, we have some tremendous, beautiful lyricism. When I say lyricism, I'm talking about gorgeous melodies, right? It's not necessarily what you think of when you think of a big, imposing symphony. But what is special about that is that that's, in a way, how it connects with the Barber Violin Concerto, which is so beautiful and about beautiful melodies for at least two of the three movements. So in the symphony, you'll have four movements, and a revolutionary way of starting a symphony, too, with just a very quiet timpani drum roll, almost unheard, and then an almost equally quiet solo clarinet comes in with a wandering kind of introspective, personal kind of melody that it's searching, it's sort of lost. And for a good minute and a half, it's just the clarinet solo and the timpani solo. This is unheard of, shocking. In the tradition of symphonies, you usually, there's different ways of starting a symphony, but this was completely original at the time, and quite courageous, actually, too. And let's not forget, when this was written, this was so close to the time of some of the other great symphonies. I have to just say, this week I decided to take a step back and think, what a year for the symphony as a genre form the 1890s were. So, this is 1899, Sibelius' First Symphony. We have Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony in 1893. We have, in that same decade of the 1890s, we have Mahler's First, Second, and Third Symphonies. We have Dvorak's Eighth and Ninth Symphonies. We have, like I said, Tchaikovsky, Bruckner, Mahler's First, and I mentioned that already. There's so many symphonies. Pieces like the Debussy Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. This is the time period that he wrote this piece. In a way, it's almost like French music, the way it starts, floating with just this clarinet in isolation over this timpani roll. And then in a jarring way, the violins come in, and the movement itself starts with a kind of excitement, but that clarinet theme will come back again later at the beginning of the fourth movement, tying the whole piece together in a beautiful, organic way. And that's, again, a kind of early signal of one of the things that became a hallmark of Sibelius' later symphonies, the way that they're concisely tied together. He uses sometimes melodies or even just little short motives and develops them, and over the course of different movements, he found revolutionary ways to explore the symphonic genre architecturally. And so he's already doing that here in the First Symphony. In a way, Sibelius is searching for his voice, his identity, and maybe that of even his country. And you get that sense that there's some searching and meandering happening here in the opening, right? It's like it's lost in a way. It hasn't found itself. It's almost in the shadows too. And then jarringly, the violins come in. and then it gets underway in a normal kind of way. Very romantic, powerful, exciting music. So much comes to mind just hearing that. It's one of the things that Sibelius does so specially is create a different sound in the orchestra. When I was talking about the landscape kind of painting, a lot of it has to do with the darker hues of the orchestra. The French horns have a huge part. You'll notice that on stage this weekend, they'll be isolated in their own sort of land, their own area. They won't be part of the back row with the brass like they sometimes are. And it's so appropriate for this piece that they have their own part. They're not just part of the brass family. They are their own like whole section, their own family. And then another one is on the clear opposite side of the stage will be the timpani. The timpani is so critical in all of Sibelius's music. It's that rumbling sound. It must have really spoke to him. And it just has a humongous part. Another one that's worth noting is the harp. He uses a harp in a symphony like nobody had in really up to this point. In a way, he out-Tchaikovsky's Tchaikovsky. With the use of the harp in this piece, it's gorgeous. It's so special. In fact, I'll just jump around a little bit, but I'll play you just a little bit of the opening of the second movement. You can hear this is full of heart. It's so gorgeous. This is a little bit of how the second movement starts. There are low harp notes in there. Yeah, and the clarinets have a big part throughout. Again, like even the very opening. I'm going to skip over most of the second movement, even though it's an amazing movement that normally a slow movement you wouldn't expect to get kind of worked up. This one gets so worked up that it speeds up to actually twice the tempo. It gets all excited, and then you realize. Then he brings back the opening theme, and you realize that all this fast paced stuff that's been working up in the second movement has actually gotten to the point where it's exactly twice faster, and then the main thing comes back on top, layered on top of that perfectly. It's beautiful and strange. The third movement has a sort of echo of Bruckner's music. Again, a big part for the timpani, but also more for the woodwinds as well. This is what it sounds like. The middle section features, again, the French horns quite a bit. Let me find that. I'm sorry, I'm giving you just the Reader's Digest version here because I do want to give enough time for Eleanor and the barber. The last movement takes that opening, searching clarinet theme from the very beginning that was so quiet and states it with all the strings, and it's powerful and almost defiant. This is a movement that has a lot of different episodes, and it takes us on a real journey. Even in the title of the movement, Sibelius wrote quasi una fantasia. So he himself acknowledged that it wasn't a strict form architecturally that you would normally have in a finale movement. It's a fantasy. He's giving himself license to work through all these different ideas in creative ways. And maybe it doesn't hold together quite as tightly as what one might expect. But in a way, it still does. It's amazing. The part that out Tchaikovsky's Tchaikovsky, I will just play. I'm just going to jump ahead to sort of one of the most glorious moments of the piece. Let me find it here. Just listen to this and just imagine that this was Tchaikovsky. Maybe. Wow, right? Where did that come from? You'll see, it's built up to that. It's just gorgeous. And I don't know if you could hear it over the speakers, but there's that harp playing in there too. Lots of beautiful parts for the harp. So you're in for a special treat. This is the first time that the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra, in all of its, I don't know where we are now, 68, 70 years, first time we've ever played this piece. Yeah, this first symphony. And it's a challenge, but a beautiful challenge. And a lot of the musicians in the orchestra, for them, it's also their first time personally playing. So that's exciting. Yeah, the other interesting thing about it, I don't want to give too much away, but you'd think with that big, lush romanticism that maybe it ends on a triumphant note, right? Well, maybe, sorta. You know, he loved Tchaikovsky, even though, isn't it interesting that Tchaikovsky was Russian, but he didn't associate Tchaikovsky's music with the Russian authorities, like forcing him and his compatriots in Finland to do things they didn't want to do. No, it was different. But maybe in a way, a nod toward the Tchaikovsky Pathétique, his final symphony that does not end triumphantly. This one also has a sort of kind of defiant searching. It ends in minor and it's still not resolved. In a way, maybe you could see this as like composers absorbing some of the political tensions of their time, the zeitgeist, that wasn't quite resolved, you know? And again, this is just before he wrote Finlandia, which, again, you know, had to do with some of these political issues. And we'll get a little bit of that with the Barber Concerto too, the way it ends so differently, and it being written right on the precipice of World War II, that it might have been absorbing some of that zeitgeist. Thank you for coming back. It's wonderful having you back.
It's so nice to listen to this. I just love Sibelius.
I was going to say, I love Sibelius 1 so much. And it was also, I mean, not only is the music amazing on its own always, but for those of us that play, often these pieces have a lot of personal history, right? So you're sort of overcome by the music itself and then also the memories of when you played it. And as William said, it's not played that often, but it especially his second symphony, which I played here at least once, is more popular. But I have actually played the first symphony several times.
You're lucky.
It's kind of followed me in strange ways, and so
Awesome.
I was thinking about that and sort of feeling
Swept up and emotional. So nice to hear William speak about this too. So.
Well, Eleanor, yeah, we have 2 mics. So tell us about what you've been up to since you've gone on to big things. Tell us about how you've been busy professionally and every other way. Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for having me back. I'm just so tickled and excited to be here. I see so many friendly, familiar faces from over the years being here in Dubuque, and that time was so special for me. I was here a lot, and it's just such a wonderful organization. I have worked with a lot of organizations before, during, and since, and the Dubuque Symphony is just unmatched in its amazing staff. I just have enjoyed working with so much over the years. The league is amazing. I mean, it's just really it warms my heart to be back working with William and the wonderful musicians of the orchestra, many of whom are familiar faces, and I have known for years and years, even before I came to Dubuque in 2016. So it's so great to be back. I feel really honored. The last time I was here was in 2022, and I was here at this Soundbites luncheon with my dear friend Ariana Kim, and we were premiering a piece by a composer friend of mine, Laura Schweininger, The Nightingales, which was such a great experience, and we played the Bach double violin concerto as well. So since then, a lot has changed in my professional life. I spent a lot of time taking auditions during my life, one of which, the most important, was auditioning here for the Dubuque Symphony for this job I really loved. But in 2024, I took an audition and won a full-time job with the Lyric Opera of Chicago Orchestra. So I just actually received, this is the end of my second season now with them. We're kind of finishing up. Oh, I'm kind of getting too close.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, no. Yeah, go away. We're friends. So I just finished my second season, so I just received tenures, so they can't get rid of me now. I had to have a big meeting with the music director and stuff. So it's been a fantastic experience. I have always loved the opera. I grew up, my dad is a pianist, and one of the main things he does is vocal coaching for opera singers. And so I grew up with opera singers being in the home a lot, hearing the great arias, learning that my dad was so into it, like telling me all about the great plots, knowing the language, knowing the musical moments, and literally hearing this. My friends would come over, they didn't want to come over and study because it was too loud. As you know from having lots of great singers in town, that it is loud. So that's been sort of my main gig since leaving Dubuque, and I kind of pinch myself every day. I'm sure a lot of you, I know a lot of you have lived in Chicago, spent time in Chicago, and probably a lot of you even now are regular opera goers there. Yeah. So it's a fabulous company. I get to play. I was telling William last night, I've spent a lot of my life playing the symphonic repertoire, some of my life playing the string quartet repertoire. And now, learning this opera repertoire, it almost feels like a whole new world again. You know, I knew all these pieces kind of from my youth, but then kind of learning them now, they're so vast, there's so much there, and I tell this story, maybe just a little anecdote. The first opera I played after I won the job was Rigoletto.
Oh yeah.
Which they've played a million times, right? They play every 3 years probably. And I happened to be sitting with, in the first violin section, a man who, so I was the newest member of the orchestra, and I was sitting with the man who's been in the orchestra the longest.
Neat.
He's up in his 70s, and he still plays the snot out of the violin. It's really, it's cool.
Yeah.
And it's all memorized. And there's this moment at the end where the young female lead of the opera, Gilda, chooses to betray her father because she's lusting after this older man who's kind of, he's a jerk, right?
He's the dude.
He's the guy in the opera, right? Yeah. And there's this really pivotal moment where this betrayal happens, and she's supposed to be like 14 in the opera, right? And so it's just this extremely tragic moment, classic opera. And the man sitting next to me, every night when we did this, several times, he would go, "Stupid girl." like he thought it would be different, you know? And that's sort of the vibes, the love, just the love of the game that is there.
They're following the plot.
Yeah, they know what's happening,
Yeah.
and it's just, this hurt him like the same now as it had 50 years ago when he joined the orchestra. So it's a really great group of people. I feel like I fit right in. It's a beautiful building for those of you that have been there if you're into architecture, and so it just
Yeah.
feels like a really rich place to be.
Oh, yeah.
to be there.
And then you've been very involved with your string quartet, and you've been teaching. Do you want to tell briefly about those two things too?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the Contras Quartet, which I was doing when I worked here too. So that's a string quartet that tours around, and that's been really wonderful, playing some of that beautiful string quartet repertoire. I love my quartet mates too. We do a lot around Chicago and touring as well. We perform on WFMT a lot. Our newest album was their pledge drive gift
Oh, that's
for
great.
on public radio in
That's great.
Chicago.
Congrats.
So, and we did a big CD release party there on the radio, which is
Nice.
fun. And then I've been teaching too. I really have always loved teaching. I wish I was playing in this side-by-side. I played in a few side-by-sides with the WQ Symphony, and this is just such a neat thing that we do here. I always have been heavily involved in community engagement and outreach and education, and always loved teaching. My mom was a violin teacher, grew up in a family of music educators.
Yeah, from day one you were with us. You were part of our, kind of adopt a musician into the schools program, which is great.
I love teaching, so I've been in this position at Elmhurst University, which formerly Elmhurst College. There's maybe even some grads here, but it's a great music program, particularly for music educators, future music educators. So my students are mostly music education majors. It's really fun, and I head the string department there. So I've been having just a really rich life and Elmhurst is just, for those of you that don't know, it's just west of Chicago, just a western suburb. So really a rich musical life in Chicago that I'm very fortunate to have, and also that I worked really hard for. So,
Yeah. Well, we're so proud of all that you've achieved, and
Thank
we're so
you.
happy that we were part of your,
yeah.
part of your journey.
This was a really wonderful time of my life, and I just am so honored that I'm been welcomed back here, a couple times now, and I hope to come back and visit even more. I know Caroline Curtis is going to be here this weekend, my predecessor, and I've had a little bit of a chance to speak with Nash too, and we have this sort of camaraderie of having been in this really great position over the years, and we'll have to definitely I was telling Mark, I texted Mark today that we have to get a photo.
The three concertmasters, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
You have a different instrument now too from when you were our concertmaster. You want to tell us a little bit about your instrument?
Yeah, I do. So I've had this instrument for about a year. So after I won the job at Lyric, let's see, how do I say this in a nice way? I had I had credit. So I went out kind of looking, and I found this beautiful instrument, and I was like, I gotta make this happen. So I've been really enjoying kind of this new partnership, friendship that still actually does feel quite new, even though it's just been a year. I played the same violin from the time I was 15 till 1 year ago.
Wow.
Which was a family instrument, which was a wonderful instrument from 1820. I've told you at the luncheons, I've talked about that instrument before, that it was a family instrument. But this is one that I picked out myself, which was really important to me. And so we've been getting to know each other, and interestingly enough, this piece, when you talk about the Barber Concerto, this is a piece that I learned when I was very young, like in my late teens, and then studied a little more in my undergraduate degree and performed it then kind of extensively. And so learning that piece specifically on a different instrument has been a really enriching process, and there are some things I miss about the comfort, of this instrument I played for a long time. Even though maybe this instrument, both are good, but maybe this instrument has more colors and capabilities. But just for those of you that have played, it has been sort of a fun adventure to figure out. And this is I have it in my bio because I'm never gonna not have it in my bio. my fancy new violin, but. So this is a violin from Naples, from the Galliano family, Naples, Italy, 1775. So
wow.
It's an amazing instrument. And part of the process too has been actually getting, it wasn't actually played very much before I came to have it. So it's been actually changing since I've had it, opening up, literally the vibrations of playing it open it up and change the sound for the better.
Yeah.
I've been working with a really fine luthier, someone that works with old instruments, a violin specialist, to work on sort of the specific setup, getting it to a place I want to be, and that's been a work in progress too. But it's been, again, a really rich process of being sort of now the curator of this really fine instrument that was around long before me, and I hope will be around long after.
Yeah, it's like you're a steward of it,
Yes,
you know.
yeah.
And it brings up a good point of why we don't see more great musical instruments in museums. Certainly there are rooms in the Metropolitan Museum in New York and Museum of Fine Arts in Boston are two of the most famous examples that have musical instrument sections, but most great museums don't have it because the great instruments need to be played, especially the strings. They need to continue to be played in order to stay in the top shape. Otherwise, it just doesn't work,
I always think of that. What other, you think about the great Stradivari instruments, right? These multi-million, million dollar instruments. Not only because they sound great, they're worth this much money, but because it's a famous maker and they have pedigree and they have all these things. What other famous thing like that is used every day and brought on the train and brought, I'm thinking of this, I'm running the CTA with this instrument, like every day. And I was like, when I brought it home from the airport, like my friend picked it up in New York and brought it to O'Hare, and I picked her up on the at 6 a.m. and we were like, oh my God, I got it, and I was thinking, I bet it's never been on the Orange Line before.
What do you think of the Orange Line? It's like your new best friend.
So it is my new buddy. So and I really do. I take it everywhere. It's a part of me, as was my old instrument too. But I always say, as someone who started playing really young, I don't remember not being a violinist ever. So I have no memories playing violin. And
That's
so
amazing.
it's so wrapped up in my identity, for better or worse, right? These are things to think about when you're starting your child on a musical instrument. But so it's a part of me. So having this new, instrument in my life has been a big change this year for me.
This piece, often in the program notes for the Barber Violin Concerto, you hear the story of its origin, which that's an important and interesting story, that it was commissioned, and then the commission kind of famously was botched in certain ways, but and it was, as a young composer, Samuel Barber's first important real commission, so that was a big deal for him. And he got was promised a princely sum in the late 1930s of $1,000. So, and that sum was actually partly in thanks to the popularity of Fels Naphtha soap. You all know Fels Naphtha soap? Okay, Samuel Fels, the owner of that company, was the one who commissioned Samuel Barber for this piece. Isn't that weird? Yes. But he had adopted a violinist prodigy and wanted this piece written for him. But the story goes that the prodigy was not happy because it was almost too beautiful and melodious, and it didn't show off like a normal violin should. The violin concerto should. Yes, it doesn't have tons of showy things. It's like so much of Samuel Barber's music, which is about beautiful melody. I mean, he's known for his vocal music, his operas, his songs. And this is a similar piece that it sings. His other most famous piece, of course, is Adagio for Strings. Also, even though there are no voices, it's a singing, beautiful piece. And so you have that. That piece was written just shortly, I think, after this. Or maybe it was even before it. It was around the same time in the 1930s. It was a little before, yeah. So it starts with a beautiful opening theme. I don't know if you don't mind playing the opening. That'd be great.
Yeah, this is a concerto where the violin comes in right away. Often in a concerto you have an orchestral introduction that lasts for some amount of time. So this has me coming out and my first note happens right away, and it's very melodic. simplistic, right? It's not particularly high, you know, where some composers really utilize this very high register. It's not particularly low. It's very middle of the range. It's sort of singable,
It's very singable.
right? You
yeah.
could sort of remember it and hum it. It's not difficult to play. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and then again, being paired with Sibelius, I find that both of these composers are finding ways to bring the idea of beautiful romanticism of the 19th century into the 20th century in their own distinctive ways, but also at a time when it was maybe not considered as popular, you know, to have sort of that kind of lush romanticism.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, a lot happened between the 1890s and the 1930s in,
Yeah.
in music.
Yeah.
And visual art too. We
Dance.
think about, you know, the avant-garde and the abstract happening, and this is not that, this
Yeah.
movement, right, at all. It's very, very concrete. They're both landscapey to me. They remind me, if I'm thinking of visual art, which I have been a lot recently, they remind me of great landscape paintings that they sort of seem to depict place and time.
Yeah. But yet they also still have a lot of heart, you know, there's
Yes.
so much heart, there's like a person in that
Yes,
landscape, or a couple, or something, I don't know.
Or memories in the
yeah,
landscape, yeah, for sure.
Interestingly, also in this concerto, there is not a moment where you have a solo cadenza where the orchestra isn't there as a grounding under you. Like, he writes cadenzas, and he writes them out, he doesn't leave them up to the soloist to improvise, which was standard pretty much by that point, but it's curious that rarely do you play completely by yourself, and then sometimes it's just a tiny snippet, you know?
No, it's
Yeah.
really a team effort
Team,
between
yeah.
soloist and orchestra. Interestingly enough, Sibelius's violin concerto is almost the opposite.
Yeah.
When he took on this form, there are huge swaths of the Sibelius concerto there that are just violin, like doing violin stuff, violin pyrotechnics, and he loved the violin.
Yeah,
so,
he did. Yeah.
As William said. So, no, this is really, I really am part of the band in this piece, and I think of myself that way, which is cool because that's
Yeah,
where my
same.
spot was. It
Yeah,
was so
exactly.
for a long time,
It's
and
perfect.
and I play in a string quartet, and I play in an opera orchestra where I really am not front and center, right? I'm literally obscured from the audience, and I like that. I like being part of the whole organism.
Yeah.
Which this piece really feels like, and so it's almost like, yes, I am the soloist, but I can really, and there's such beautiful melodies in
Orchestra
me that
writing.
leads us into the second movement,
Yeah.
that in all the other instruments in the orchestra that are, you know, just as beautiful or more beautiful than
Sometimes,
than-
yeah. Yeah, there's beautiful parts for the woodwinds. There's wonderful, like, piano plays a nice role in this. The strings have great parts, but the second movement has particularly beautiful oboe solo at the beginning. Yeah,
A little homage to Brahms.
it is exactly like the slow movement of the Brahms Violin Concerto oboe solo. Yeah, I mean it doesn't quote it or anything, but it's just that idea that the oboe gets the main melody in the slow movement of this violin concerto is exactly sort of one of the unusual things about the Brahms Violin
It would be
Concerto.
impossible to not compare
Yeah.
the two pieces
Yeah.
in that way, because
Yeah.
Barber knew when he writes a piece entitled The Violin Concerto, there's a whole history of pieces that he's, you know, putting himself in line
Yeah.
with, right? And so this little sort of, it's almost a little Easter egg, right? That
Yeah,
it's,
it
you know,
is,
that
yeah.
he has the oboe play this amazing melody. I mean, it feels reductive to call it an Easter egg for how amazing it is.
It
but,
is.
yeah.
It's gorgeous. But that whole movement, and both movements are just so beautiful and gorgeous.
Yes.
It's interesting that when you come in the second movement, you're sort of searching, and then you bring in this whole different kind of almost defiant sort of energy.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Do you want to play a little bit of the second
Yeah,
movement?
sure.
for us?
So there's unlike the first movement, the second movement has a very long orchestral introduction with this whole melody with the oboe that we are talking about. And so during that, I'm not doing anything. I'm just get to listen, right? But when I do come in, it's a searching melody, as William said. It's actually not unlike this clarinet melody at the beginning of the Sibelius Symphony in that way. Sort of foggy, and there are underneath me, if you can imagine, there would be just a blanket of string sounds sort of underneath, pillowing underneath. I'll try.
And then finally later, you do get to play the oboe melody. And
Oh,
you
yes.
think that maybe you'd play it up higher than the oboe could,
No.
but surprisingly low down on the G string.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of, I mean, there's plenty of high stuff in this movement,
Yeah.
but the heart of maybe the whole piece
Yeah.
is this melody in the second movement that he chooses to put on the G string, which is our lowest string, but up high on the G string. I could actually play this melody. Maybe I should play it both ways. I don't know
Yeah.
which one I have. So the melody goes like this. But how he instructs you to do it instead of there, the cool thing about violin is you can play melodies in lots of different places. So he has it up here. So dark and kind of both happy and sad. Kind of, there's a lot of melancholy in it, but a lot of hope in it as well.
Yeah, it's the exact same notes, but different fingering on a different string, and it makes it darker and more rich, and it's beautiful. So after having two movements that are so singing and beautiful and with great melodies, how should he end the piece? A piece that almost has a third movement that almost has no melody whatsoever. It's one of the again in a long line of traditions. Like he thought of this violin concerto joining the other great violin concertos. There are other traditions of violin perpetual motion pieces and some piano as well. So he writes a piece that's sort of non-stop perpetual motion, and it's fast and furious.
Right, it's almost constant. I have a couple breaks in this movement, but it's constant, constant notes for about 4 minutes.
You make it look easy. It's not easy. And that was maybe one of the complaints when the commission, because they thought, well, the first two movements don't show off the violin's pyrotechnics. The third movement does, but it's like crazy hard and it's short, and so they had some points about that. But it's a brilliant piece, and actually, this has become like the most often performed American violin concerto by far. It's well loved and often played, and the third movement, even though it has perpetual motion, it's just the right piece of like bonbon dessert after the beautiful, heartfelt first and second movement. It's like a fun, dashing, and it ends with such pyrotechnics that it brings the audience to their feet every time.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing piece of music. I mean, the complaint was maybe about like the balance of it, but Barber knew even we call him young, he's in his 30s, but he knew better than they knew at the time. And it really is so, I think it's a perfect piece of music.
Yeah, it really is. And do you hear some of the franticness of the third movement being echoes of the impending World War II? You know, he started writing this piece in Switzerland. He was forced out of Europe because World War II was about to happen. He came back and finished the piece in the Poconos in this country. But maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's some of a little bit kind of craziness, unsure what's going to happen. But it's also kind of strangely fun. There's some cowboy even moments of hoedowny moments in this movement. So yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I see it. That's definitely a reading that I've thought about too, and I think I see it a little more as sort of reckoning with. Well, I guess it's hard to separate the sort of schism in the arts between the avant-garde and the more concrete, I guess. His sort of reckoning with what it means to be a modern composer, And of course, that is really wrapped up in politics. You can't separate the two, and world events.
Yeah.
But I think because this movement, if you heard it alone, the last movement, without the context of the other two movements, you'd hear it totally differently. You'd say, oh, this is so extremely modern. And of course, the first two movements have many modern elements and harmonies in them as well, but they're very accessible.
Yeah.
And so it is, in a way, maybe it's sort of like in him trying to straddle both worlds, and maybe that has to do with politics too.
It could be.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Eleanor. Bravo. We're so happy to have you back. Bravo, Eleanor. Thank you. Can't wait for these performances. Thank you all so much for being here. I apologize that we went over time today. I want to thank again the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra League, not only for hosting these luncheons, but for their concert sponsorship this weekend. Thank you all for being here and all the ways that you bring so much to this community. And we'll see you this weekend.